All right, with that said, Rob, let's get into it. A lot of talk, and you mentioned it earlier in the first hour, a lot of talk entering this series of if the Warriors win the championship, what does that say about Kevin Durant and his 2 rings? And look, it would take nothing away from Durant's greatness as an individual player, but if they're to win the championship without him, I mean, it would take a little shine off those rings, in my opinion, because it's not that they got to the finals without him, because they did that before he came, right? They actually won a championship before he came. But it's that, and he made them phenomenal, but the question is, how much was he needed on that team? Did he just go to a team that was so good and he made it better and the rings were easy to get? So that's the narrative that a lot of people will have if the Warriors win. But to be fair, what if they lose? If they lose, and a lot of people, especially young people, Rob, they think this is the greatest dynasty in NBA history, at least since the Celtics of Bill Russell. That obviously was the greatest. But since then, in the modern era, a lot of people think these Warriors are the greatest dynasty or rivaling Jordan's Bulls. And if they win it, maybe they'll be better than Jordan's Bulls. If they lose this series though, Rob, all of the dynasty talk goes out the window. All of at least for now, everything's fluid, but if the Steph being a top 10 all-time player goes out the window. And to me, Rob, in being fair, if they lose this series, they go from some people thinking they were this all-time great dynasty to a great team that won a championship in 2015, like Toronto won it in 2019, like Dallas won it in 2011. But those aren't like all-time great teams. Nobody's talking about them in historical, ways. And now, obviously, with the Durant years, those 2 that he was healthy, that was an all-time great team, but only 2 years, not a dynasty. And so you would look at them without Durant, and you would say, okay, they won it in 2015, and that was great. You don't take that away from them. A lot of teams have won because of injuries. And whether it was because of injuries or not, a lot of teams have won at least benefiting from the opponent's injuries. And they will fall into that category, right? Kyrie was out. Kevin Love, but who knows what he meant. But Kyrie Irving certainly would have meant a lot. Then they lost the next year. They won 73, but hey, you didn't finish the deal. So they lost that finals. And then they lost to Toronto with Durant hurt. And then they would be losing to Boston this year without Durant. So, Rob, if we're going to be fair and we're going to criticize or take away from Kevin Durant's legacy, if you will, if Golden State wins this series, then we have to be fair and admit, this also takes a little bit of shine off of Steph and Golden State if they lose this series.
I think you have to, Chris, and I think you would have to put in a different category where the Warriors are. And you can now, Chris, if they do lose to the Celtics, start to go back and unpack their championships. Start to look. When you look, I think the biggest surprise for most people is that in their last 9 NBA Finals games, without Kevin Durant, these Warriors, Chris, are 1-8. That's an unbelievable number. With Steph and with Clay and with Draymond and all these guys who are all going to the Hall of Fame, right?
Right.
That's an unbelievable run to be 1-8 in the NBA Finals.
Right.
I think that says something. And I think you do start to look and say, nitpick and look through their run, see what championship they won, remind people that they choked down a 3-1 lead. They won 2 when Durant was there. He was the finals MVP in both. And then with no Durant, they got back to the finals, But Boston, which was the underdog, beat them, and they lost another championship. I think it will change everything. And not saying that you're taking away the championship or you're poo-pooing the entire run.
Right.
But it won't feel as good, Chris. It just won't. No. And I think this is like very important legacy-wise. It really is. It doesn't undo anything or rewrite the history books, but the way people look at you, I think would change. And you're right. That conversation about Steph being in the top 10, Chris, that will not be addressed.
No. If they lose this series, he's not in that conversation. I'm sorry. And I'm, Rob, I like Steph. But he's still, top 15-ish and all that stuff. But the top 10, that would not be the case if they lose this series. And also, Rob, and look, I'm one that has believed, and this won't necessarily change my belief of this, but I'm one that believes had they not gotten Kevin Durant in 2017, or he went there in the summer of 2016, I still think they would have won the championship because without Kevin Durant, they had LeBron and Kyrie and Kevin Love and others with Ty Lue as the head coach. They had them down 3-1. And I think you would agree, not taking anything away from the Cavs, but if Draymond Green's not suspended, I know he played 6 and 7, but that turned everything. And so I think they would have been so motivated. I may be wrong. None of us know. But my feeling is just that they would have come back and won that championship. But regardless how you feel about that, Rob, just like Kevin Durant could be slighted if they win it, if they lose it, it could heighten his image, his legacy.
Yes.
Right? It would be like, well, and look, it's not saying the Warriors weren't a great team without him. It's not for those that killed him for going there. He still went to a great team. But it was a team you would be able to say, no matter how good they were, they needed him. And that's what this whole
conversation is about.
Right, that's what it's about.
Right. It is.
They need him.
And then you have Draymond, they don't need him.
Right.
This whole narrative that, well, we don't need him. And now if you are in a series like this and the Celtics nobody's played in the finals. Chris, nobody.
Right.
0. Right. And you lose to that team, that doesn't mean that they're not talented, but they're not proven like the Warriors. That's what will be another demerit on this bunch.
Well, and Rob, let's face it, was that Toronto team wasn't an all-time great team?
Nope, it wasn't.
They had one star. And with all due respect to Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam, they had one real legitimate superstar. And he was only there 1 year, and they had a first-year coach. And then Boston, at least at this point, and, Rob, I got the utmost respect for this Celtics team. I picked them over Milwaukee. I picked them over Miami. But at least at this point, who knows what they do going forward. At this point, nobody's looking at them as like this all-time great team, right?
No, not at all.
Their stars are young. 5th and 6th years in the league, 24, 25 years old. And they've got warts. And if they were to lose to them, they lost to Toronto, they lost to, now it would be Boston, then there's no doubt it will make you rethink things. It won't, Steph Curry will still be regarded by most, not all, obviously with Rob, but as the best shooter ever. Steph Curry will still be, top 15-ish type player. Only unanimous MVP. Draymond and Klay probably still getting the Hall of Fame. But we will rethink them, Rob. Because people, am I wrong that people think of them as one of the greatest teams ever, even without Durant? Am I right?
Well, because they went to the finals. What was it? 5 years in a row.
This will be 5 and it was 6 of 8. This is their 6th year. 6 of 8 in the finals.
Right. That's what people look at. But the results without Kevin Durant aren't great. And that's the part that if they lose again without Kevin Durant, then you start to go, let me see. like we just said, they're 1-8, Chris, in their last 9. What if they lose in 5 games or something like that? And then you start looking, and it's like they're 2 and what would that be? 2-12,
11, 2-11,
2-11 in their last 13 finals game.
Right.
That is not special. That's nothing that you're going to write home about and ballyhoo and talk about what a great franchise and dynasty they were.